I never thought I would hear those words from my own daughter. A week before her 30th birthday, as we sat at our family dinner, Melissa looked directly at Lonnie and said, "The greatest gift would be if you just died." The table fell silent. The pain in Lonnie's eyes cut through me like a knife. He had been working for months to surprise her with the house of her dreams. 20 years of trying to buy her love had led to this moment of ultimate rejection. What happened next changed everything. Lonnie and I met when we were both 22, full of dreams and ambition. He was already showing the tenacity that would later make him successful, working 2 jobs while taking night classes in business management. By the time we married a year later, he had already laid the groundwork for what would become Harrington Construction, starting with small renovation projects and gradually building a reputation for quality work. When Melissa was born, Lonnie was in the middle of securing his first major commercial contract. I still remember how he rushed to the hospital straight from a meeting, his dress shirt stained with coffee, blueprint still clutched in his hand. He held our daughter with such tenderness that night, promising her the world while his calloused hands gently stroked her tiny fingers. As the business grew, so did the distance between us. Lonnie worked 14-hour days, 6 days a week. He would come home exhausted, often missing dinner, bedtime stories, and eventually, school performances and parent-teacher conferences. His absence left a void that I unintentionally filled with resentment, which I now realize I passed on to Melissa. When our marriage finally collapsed under the weight of neglect and misunderstanding, Melissa was 13. The divorce was civil on paper, but bitter in reality. I got primary custody, our suburban home, and substantial alimony. Lonnie got weekend visits that Melissa increasingly found reasons to avoid. "I have a feeling Daddy only wants to see us because the judge says he has to," I once told Melissa after she asked why she needed to spend the weekend at his new downtown condo. Those words, spoken carelessly during a moment of personal pain, planted seeds that would grow into something ugly over time. Lonnie tried to compensate for his absence with extravagance. When Melissa got her driver's license at 16, he didn't just buy her a car, a brand new sports car worth $50,000. When she complained that her friends all had cars with more personality, he immediately traded it for a vintage convertible that cost twice as much. For her high school graduation, he paid for her and 5 friends to spend 2 weeks in Europe. Throughout her teenage years, Melissa's sense of entitlement grew alongside her father's bank account. Lonnie's construction business had expanded into real estate development, making him one of the wealthiest businessmen in our city. Each time Melissa expressed displeasure with a gift, Lonnie would simply replace it with something more expensive, mistaking materialism for connection. I watched this pattern with growing concern but said nothing. Part of me felt Melissa deserved whatever she could get from her absent father. Another part, which I'm not proud of, enjoyed seeing Lonnie struggle to buy the affection he had failed to earn through presents. When Melissa left for an exclusive private college on the East Coast, Lonnie paid for everything: an apartment in the most expensive part of the city, a clothing allowance that would make a fashion editor blush, and spring break trips to destinations that most people only dream about. He flew out for Parents' Weekend each year, but Melissa always found a way to limit their time together to formal dinners where conversation remained superficial. After graduation, Melissa took a job at a prestigious marketing firm, though her salary was more supplementary than necessary, given Lonnie's continued financial support. That's when Tyler entered the picture. Tyler Hamilton had the polished good looks of someone born into privilege, but as I later discovered, his background was decidedly middle class. He had worked his way through state college and landed a job at the same firm as Melissa. What he lacked in family money, he made up for with charm and expensive tastes that somehow always seemed to be funded by others. From the beginning, Lonnie had reservations about Tyler. "There's something about that young man that doesn't sit right with me," he confided during one of our rare private conversations. We had maintained a cordial relationship for Melissa's sake, occasionally meeting to discuss concerns about our daughter. "You're just worried about losing your little girl," I replied, dismissing his concerns as overprotectiveness. In truth, I had my own doubts about Tyler, but years of being positioned as Lonnie's adversary made it difficult to acknowledge when we might actually agree on something. As Melissa's relationship with Tyler grew more serious, her financial demands on Lonnie increased. Suddenly there were conversations about down payments for luxury condos, investment opportunities that Tyler had exclusive access to, and even seed money for a business venture that never quite materialized. Through it all, Lonnie continued to give, hoping that generosity might eventually build the bridge to his daughter that time and presence had failed to construct. What neither Melissa nor I knew was that Lonnie had been planning something extraordinary for her 30th birthday, something he believed would finally win her genuine affection. 6 months before her birthday, Lonnie purchased 5 acres of prime lakefront property just outside the city. He'd begun construction on a custom home with every feature Melissa had ever mentioned, wanting from an infinity pool overlooking the water to a dedicated wine cellar. The project was valued at $2.3 million, not including the land. He'd been personally overseeing every detail of the construction, often going directly from his office to the building site to check on progress until well after dark. The house was to be his ultimate gesture, a tangible symbol of his love and a foundation for Melissa's future. What he couldn't have known was that his gift would never be received as intended, and that the foundation he'd so carefully laid would become the setting for a very different kind of family legacy. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came about 3 months before Melissa's birthday. I had stopped by her apartment to drop off some mail that had been delivered to my house. Tyler answered the door, clearly surprised to see me. "Melissa's not here," he said, blocking the entrance. "She's at a work thing. I can give her whatever that is." He gestured to the small stack of envelopes in my hand. "That's okay," I replied, noticing his disheveled appearance and the tension in his shoulders. "I was hoping to catch up with her. Mind if I wait?" she mentioned, wanting to have lunch soon anyway. Tyler hesitated before reluctantly stepping aside. As I entered their expensively furnished apartment, I noticed several screens open on his laptop on the coffee table. He quickly closed the computer, but not before I caught a glimpse of what looked like an online gambling site. "Can I get you something to drink?" Tyler asked, his typical smooth charm noticeably absent. "Just water is fine." I settled onto their living room sofa, taking in details I hadn't noticed before. The beautiful painting that Lonnie had purchased for Melissa's birthday last year was missing from the wall. The antique jewelry box that had belonged to Lonnie's mother was no longer on the side table. While Tyler went to the kitchen, I couldn't resist a quick glance at a stack of papers beside the laptop. At the top was an overdue notice from a credit card company, showing an outstanding balance of over $30,000. That evening, I called Lonnie to share my concerns. "I think Tyler might have a gambling problem," I said after exchanging pleasantries. And I noticed several expensive items missing from their apartment. There was a long silence before Lonnie spoke. "This isn't the first time I've heard something like this," he said finally. "Joe mentioned seeing Tyler at a high-stakes poker game last month, losing big. I dismissed it then, but maybe I shouldn't have." Joe was Lonnie's business partner and closest friend, someone who had been with him since the early days of Harrington Construction. "Have you given them money recently?" I asked. "Melissa called last week saying they needed help with a down payment on a vacation property. An investment opportunity, she called it. I transferred $50,000 without asking questions." His voice carried the weariness of someone who had been down this road too many times. 2 weeks later, Lonnie discovered that the vacation property didn't exist. When confronted, Melissa claimed there had been a misunderstanding, that the deal had fallen through at the last minute. She promised to return the money, but changed the subject whenever Lonnie brought it up afterward. Around this time, Lonnie tried a different approach with Melissa. He invited her to lunch, just the two of them, at the small diner where he used to take her for pancakes on Saturday mornings when she was little. "I don't want to talk about money today," he told her once they were seated. "I want to know about you. Are you happy, Melissa? Really happy?" She seemed taken aback by the question. "I'm fine, Dad. Everything's great." "That's not what I asked," he persisted gently. "Success, money, possessions, those aren't the same as happiness. Is this about the vacation property? Because I told you, that wasn't my fault." Lonnie shook his head. "This is about us. About the fact that we never really talk. I've been thinking a lot lately about what matters. I built this business hoping to give you security, opportunities I never had. But somewhere along the way, I think I got it wrong." Melissa's expression hardened. "If this is your way of saying you're cutting me off financially, just say it directly." "That's not it at all," Lonnie said, his disappointment evident. "I'm trying to say that I want more than a financial relationship with my daughter. Money is the easiest thing to give. Time, understanding, genuine connection, those are the gifts that matter." "Well, time is about 20 years too late," she replied coldly. "And as for understanding, you've never understood me or what I wanted. You were always too busy with your precious business." The lunch ended shortly after, with nothing resolved. When Lonnie shared this conversation with me later, I could hear the pain in his voice, the realization that the chasm between him and Melissa might be unbridgeable. "Maybe Joe's right," he said. "He tells me I've become an ATM, not a father, that I need to stop trying to buy her love." Joe had never been shy about offering his opinion on Lonnie's relationship with Melissa. A lifelong bachelor with no children of his own, Joe viewed the situation with the clarity of an outsider. That girl hasn't had to face a consequence for her actions since she was 13 years old, he'd once told Lonnie in my presence. You're not doing her any favors by handling everything. What truly broke my heart was discovering just how calculated the exploitation had become. About a month before Melissa's birthday, I stopped by their apartment again, this time finding it empty. I'd been given a key for emergencies, and while I knew I shouldn't snoop, something compelled me to look around. In their home office, I found Tyler's laptop open. A spreadsheet was visible on the screen with a title that made my blood run cold. Lonnie Harrington Asset Acquisition Strategy. The document detailed a methodical plan to systematically manipulate Melissa into extracting maximum financial benefit from her father. There were notes about which emotional triggers were most effective when asking for money. A column tracked which types of investment opportunities Lonnie was most likely to fund without asking too many questions. Most disturbing was an entry titled Medical Emergency Scenario, which outlined a fictional health crisis they planned to use if other methods failed to secure a large sum. I took photos of the spreadsheet with my phone, unsure of what to do with this information. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just entitled behavior or financial dependence. This was calculated exploitation of a father's love for his child. The question that haunted me was how much Melissa knew. Was she an active participant in this scheme, or was she being manipulated by Tyler just as surely as Lonnie was? Either way, I knew that Lonnie's heart would be shattered when he learned the truth, and I couldn't help but wonder about my own role in creating this situation. Had my bitterness during the divorce years helped shape Melissa into someone who could view her father as nothing more than a financial resource? With these thoughts weighing heavily on my mind, we approached the family dinner that would change everything, a casual birthday celebration planned a week before Melissa's actual 30th birthday, with her real gift, the lakefront house, still waiting to be revealed. The evening of the pre-birthday dinner was unseasonably warm for early October. I arrived at Lonnie's house 30 minutes early to help with preparations. Despite our divorce 20 years earlier, we had settled into a comfortable rhythm for family gatherings. His sprawling suburban home, with its professional kitchen and spacious dining room, made it the logical choice for hosting. Do you think she'll like the wine? Lonnie asked as he carefully decanted a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon that cost more than most people's monthly car payments. It's from the year she was born. It's perfect, I assured him, touched by how much thought he put into even the smallest details. Have you decided when you're going to tell her about the house? A smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. I thought I'd drop a few hints tonight. Maybe take her for a drive out to the property tomorrow. The construction crew is working double shifts to get the exterior finished before her actual birthday. Lonnie had shown me photos of the house just last week. Every detail had been customized to Melissa's tastes, from the marble countertops imported from Italy to the custom bookshelves designed to display her collection of first editions. The master bathroom alone had cost more than my entire home renovation. She's going to be overwhelmed, I said, arranging flowers in a crystal vase. What I didn't say was that I wondered if she would truly appreciate the thought behind the gift, or just see it as another expensive offering from a father trying to buy her affection. Melissa and Tyler arrived precisely at 7, both dressed impeccably. Tyler immediately complimented Lonnie on his new artwork, an expensive piece by a contemporary artist that hung in the entryway. Melissa air kissed both our cheeks, her perfume lingering in the air. Happy almost birthday, sweetheart, Lonnie said, pulling out her chair at the dining table. I can't believe my little girl is turning 30. Hardly a little girl anymore, Dad, she replied with a tight smile. The first half of dinner progressed pleasantly enough. We enjoyed the gourmet meal prepared by the private chef Lonnie had hired for the occasion. Tyler kept the conversation flowing with amusing anecdotes from work and observations about the booming real estate market. Speaking of real estate, Lonnie said as dessert was being served, a perfect opening to begin hinting at his surprise. I've been thinking about the future lately, about legacy and what we leave behind. Retirement planning already? Tyler asked with a chuckle. You're not that old, Lonnie. Not retirement, more about making sure Melissa has everything she needs for the life she deserves. Lonnie's eyes shone with anticipation. I've been working on something special, something that I hope will make your birthday truly memorable this year. Melissa set down her fork, suddenly alert. What kind of special? Well, I can't reveal everything tonight, but let's just say it involves a certain view you've always admired. Remember when you were 16 and we took that drive out to Lake Windermere? You pointed to those houses on the North Shore and said how perfect it would be to watch the sunrise over the water every morning. I watched Melissa's expression shift, her eyes narrowing slightly as she calculated what this might mean financially. Tyler placed his hand over hers on the table, giving it a gentle squeeze. That sounds intriguing, Tyler said, leaning forward. Is this an investment opportunity you're considering? Not exactly an investment, Lonnie replied. More of a gift, the kind that can't be replaced or duplicated. A lake house? Melissa asked directly. You're buying me a lake house for my birthday? Lonnie laughed softly. You always were impatient about surprises. I was hoping to keep you guessing a bit longer. But yes, it's something along those lines. Well, Tyler interjected, raising his wine glass, to generous fathers and lakefront properties, may both appreciate in value. Something about Tyler's toast felt wrong, reducing Lonnie's heartfelt gift to a financial transaction. I wasn't the only one who noticed. A shadow passed over Lonnie's face, though he quickly recovered and raised his glass in return. As the chef cleared the dessert plates, Lonnie brought out a small wrapped box. This is just a token gift for tonight. The real present is still in the works. Melissa unwrapped the box to reveal a delicate silver compass on a chain. It's beautiful, she said, though I could tell she was underwhelmed by such a modest gift after the talk of lakefront property. It has an inscription, Lonnie pointed out, on the back. She turned it over to read the engraved words. To help you find your way home, always. Love, Dad. The sentimental type as always, Melissa said, with a slight roll of her eyes. Thanks, Dad. I thought it was appropriate, Lonnie continued, his enthusiasm undimmed. A compass to guide you to new beginnings. I've been thinking that maybe it's time for me to do things differently. To be the kind of father I should have been all along. What does that mean exactly? Melissa asked, her tone suddenly guarded. It means I want more than just a financial relationship with my daughter. I want us to spend real time together. I thought maybe we could even work on this project together. There are still decisions to be made about the interior, landscaping. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That's a generous offer, but Melissa's schedule is pretty packed these days. We're actually considering a move ourselves, maybe out of state for a new opportunity. This was clearly news to Lonnie, whose expression faltered. Out of state? This is the first I'm hearing of this. It's still in the early stages, Melissa said quickly. Nothing's decided yet. I see. Lonnie set his napkin on the table. Well, I hope you'll at least wait to see what I've been working on before you make any decisions. It might change your perspective. About that, Tyler said, his voice taking on a business-like tone. While we appreciate the thought behind a lake house, what might be more useful at this stage would be liquid assets. We've been looking into some investment opportunities that could really set us up for the future. I watched Lonnie's expression shift from confusion to disappointment. This isn't just any lake house, Tyler. This is something I've put my heart into. Something special for my daughter. Dad, Melissa interjected, her voice taking on the condescending tone she often used with Lonnie. While I'm sure your intentions are good, Tyler's right. At this point in our lives, we need flexibility, not another property to maintain. Maintain? Lonnie looked stricken. Melissa, this isn't some burden I'm trying to saddle you with. This is a home, a place for you to build a life, maybe a family someday. A family? She laughed, the sound brittle and harsh. Is that what this is about? You're still hoping for grandchildren to make up for your failures as a father? The room fell silent. I could see Lonnie struggling to process the cruelty in her words. That's not fair, I said, unable to stay silent any longer. Your father has only ever wanted what's best for you. What's best for me? Melissa's voice rose. He doesn't know the first thing about what's best for me. He never has. He thinks he can buy his way into my life after being absent for most of it. I made mistakes, Lonnie admitted, his voice soft but steady. I know that. I put the business ahead of our family, and I've regretted that every day since, but I'm trying to make it right. Make it right? Melissa stood up, her face flushed with anger, or perhaps something else. Do you know what would make it right, Dad? Do you want to know what the greatest gift would be? Melissa, Tyler warned, suddenly looking concerned. She ignored him, leaning across the table toward Lonnie. The greatest gift would be if you just died. The words hung in the air like smoke. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Tyler's expression was a mixture of shock and something else, something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. Lonnie sat perfectly still, the color draining from his face as if he'd been physically struck. For a moment that stretched into eternity, no one moved or spoke. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, Lonnie folded his napkin and placed it beside his plate. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and looked at his daughter with eyes that reflected not anger, but a profound, irreparable heartbreak. Without a word, he walked out of the dining room and through the front door. The soft click of the latch closing behind him was more devastating than any slam could have been. "Melissa," I whispered, horrified. "How could you say such a thing?" She remained standing, her chin raised defiantly, though I could see her hands trembling. He needed to hear the truth for once. "That wasn't truth. That was cruelty," I said, rising from my chair. "You should be ashamed of yourself." I rushed outside to find Lonnie sitting in his car in the circular driveway, his hands gripping the steering wheel though the engine wasn't running. When I tapped on the window, he lowered it but didn't look at me. "Lonnie, I'm so sorry. She didn't mean it. She couldn't have." A single tear traced its way down his weathered cheek. "The worst part," he said, his voice barely audible, "is that I think she did mean it. All these years, all the things I've given her, and that's how she sees me, as someone whose death would be a gift to her." I had no words to offer that could possibly ease the pain of such a rejection. I reached through the window and covered his hand with mine. "Go back inside, Sarah," he said after a moment. "I need some time alone. Are you going to be okay?" He finally turned to look at me, his eyes reflecting decades of regret and new resolution. "No, not for a while. But eventually, I will be." I watched as he started the car and drove away, unaware that it would be weeks before anyone heard from him again. As I walked back to the house, I heard raised voices coming from inside. Through the window, I could see Melissa and Tyler arguing, his face animated with frustration, hers with defiance. In that moment, I realized that the fractures in our family had finally broken wide open, and nothing would ever be the same again. What I didn't know then was that a family friend had overheard Melissa at a social gathering several months earlier, spinning elaborate tales about Lonnie's alleged emotional abuse and manipulation. She had described him as controlling and vindictive, claiming he had sabotaged her career opportunities and relationships out of jealousy. These lies had spread through our social circle, tainting Lonnie's reputation among people who had known him for decades. This final betrayal, on top of everything else, would prove to be the catalyst for a transformation none of us could have anticipated. The morning after the disastrous dinner, I called Lonnie repeatedly. Each time, the call went straight to voicemail. By afternoon, concern had overshadowed my initial assumption that he simply needed space to process his hurt. "Have you heard from your father?" I asked when I called Melissa. "No, and I don't expect to," she replied, her voice clipped. "He's probably sulking somewhere, waiting for me to apologize." "Melissa, what you said was unforgivable. You need to make this right." I told him the truth. If he can't handle it, that's his problem. I ended the call, my disappointment in my daughter reaching new depths. Next, I tried Lonnie's office, speaking with his assistant, Amanda. "Mr. Harrington called early this morning," she informed me, her tone professional but concerned. "He's taken an indefinite leave of absence, effective immediately. He asked that all his appointments be rescheduled or handled by Mr. Peterson." Joe Peterson had been Lonnie's right-hand man for over 20 years. If anyone would know Lonnie's whereabouts, it would be him. "I'm afraid Mr. Peterson isn't available either," Amanda continued when I asked to speak with him. "He's in meetings all day regarding Mr. Harrington's absence." By the third day, with no word from Lonnie, my concern had grown into genuine worry. I drove to his house, using the spare key he had given me years ago for emergencies. The large home was immaculately clean and orderly, showing no signs of hasty packing or distress. His toothbrush was still in the bathroom, clothes still hung in the closet, and his favorite reading glasses sat beside the leather armchair in his study. The only thing noticeably different was his home office. The usually cluttered desk was completely clear, the file cabinet drawers slightly ajar and empty. His laptop was missing, as was the small safe he kept in the bookshelf. After leaving Lonnie's house, I drove directly to Harrington Construction headquarters downtown. The receptionist recognized me immediately and buzzed me through to the executive floor, where I found Joe Peterson emerging from a conference room, looking tired and harried. "Sarah," he said, genuine warmth in his voice, despite his obvious stress. "I was wondering when you'd show up. Where is he, Joe? Is he okay?" Joe guided me into his office and closed the door. "Physically, he's fine. Emotionally, that's another story." He gestured for me to sit. "I can't tell you where he is, 'cause I honestly don't know. What I can tell you is that he's been planning this for a while." "Planning what exactly?" "A complete restructuring. Of his life, his business, his relationships." Joe leaned back in his chair. "Lonnie's been seeing a therapist for the past 6 months, and working with a financial advisor specializing in high-net-worth divestment. This revelation stunned me. Lonnie had always been intensely private about his personal struggles, preferring to project an image of unwavering strength. Why would he need divestment advice? The business is thriving. It's not about the business. It's about Melissa. Joe's expression hardened slightly. He finally realized that his money was hurting her, not helping. That he was enabling behaviors that would eventually destroy her. So what's he done? Joe hesitated. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. He's canceled all automatic transfers to Melissa's accounts, removed her as an authorized user on his credit cards, and he's instructed his attorney to rewrite his will. And the lake house? I asked, already suspecting the answer. Construction halted 3 days ago. The crews were paid in full and dismissed. Joe handed me a business card. This is the contact information for Lonnie's attorney. He said you might need it. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Melissa. Her voice frantic in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. Mom, something's wrong. All my cards are being declined. The bank says the transfer Dad normally makes on the 1st wasn't processed. I've been trying to reach him, but he won't answer my calls. I know, I said, suddenly exhausted by the whole situation. He's taken a leave of absence from the company. No one knows where he is. What? He can't just disappear. What about the lake house? Tyler drove out there today, and the place is deserted. All the construction equipment is gone. So Tyler had known exactly where the property was, despite acting surprised at dinner. This confirmed my suspicions about how calculated their approach to Lonnie had been. Melissa, you told your father that the best gift he could give you was his death. What did you expect him to do? There was silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. I didn't mean it literally. It was just something I said in the heat of the moment. Words have consequences, especially cruel ones. Your father has supported you financially your entire adult life. He was building you a multi-million-dollar home as a birthday gift. And you thanked him by saying the world would be better if he were dead. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, and I could hear genuine fear in her voice. I have bills, commitments. You have a job, Melissa. Maybe it's time you lived within those means. The next 2 weeks brought significant changes. Tyler's true colors began to show as the financial well ran dry. Melissa called me in tears after a particularly ugly argument in which he had berated her for screwing up the golden goose, his charming facade crumbling under the pressure of mounting gambling debts. I suggested she come stay with me for a few days, to clear her head, an offer she initially rejected but eventually accepted, after Tyler's verbal abuse escalated. The night she arrived at my house, suitcase in hand, and eyes swollen from crying, she looked younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. He's been lying to me, she admitted as we sat in my kitchen, cups of tea growing cold between us. About everything. His background, his job success. He's been stealing from me, Mom. Taking things Dad gave me and selling them. I know, I said gently. I suspected as much when I saw your grandmother's jewelry box was missing. He said it was being repaired. She shook her head, looking disgusted with herself. I believed him. I believed everything he told me, including all the awful things he said about Dad. This was the first acknowledgement that perhaps her view of Lonnie had been influenced by Tyler's manipulation. It felt like a tiny crack in a wall of resentment that had been building for decades. Your father made mistakes, Melissa. We both did. But he loves you. Everything he's done, even cutting you off financially, comes from that love. She looked up sharply. How is abandoning me an act of love? He hasn't abandoned you. He's giving you the opportunity to stand on your own feet, to discover who you are without the cushion of his money. I don't even know how to do that, she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. I've never had to. Then it's time to learn. 3 weeks after the fateful dinner, with still no direct contact from Lonnie, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Sarah? It's Lonnie. The sound of his voice sent a wave of relief through me. Lonnie. Thank God. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm fine. He paused. I'm finding my way. I needed time to think, to reevaluate everything. Everyone's worried sick about you. He chuckled, though the sound held little humor. By everyone, you mean you, and maybe Joe. I doubt Melissa has given me much thought except to wonder when the money will start flowing again. You're wrong, I said. She's left Tyler. She's been staying with me for the past week. This news was met with silence. Then, is she okay? Not really. She's having to face some hard truths. About Tyler, about herself, about the kind of person she's become. I never wanted to hurt her, Lonnie said, his voice thick with emotion. But I finally realized that continuing as we were would hurt her more in the long run. Where are you, Lonnie? I can't tell you that yet. I'm not ready to come back. But I need your help with something important. He paused. I've had a package delivered to your house. It's for Melissa, but I need you to take it to her apartment and leave it on her table. Can you do that for me? Of course, but wouldn't it be better if you gave it to her yourself? Not yet. She needs to see what's in that package first. Then, if she wants to, she can find me. He gave me specific instructions about when to deliver the package, a date exactly 4 weeks after the dinner, which would be Melissa's actual birthday. Lonnie, what are you planning? A second chance. For both of us. With that cryptic response, he ended the call. The package arrived the next day. A plain cardboard box, sealed with packing tape. True to my word, I didn't open it, though curiosity nearly got the better of me. As the designated day approached, Melissa moved back to her apartment. Tyler had apparently cleared out his belongings while she was staying with me, leaving behind unpaid bills and empty promises. I need to figure out who I am without him, she told me. Without Dad's money, without all the things I've been using to avoid looking at myself. It was the most honest and self-aware statement I'd heard from my daughter in years. It gave me hope that whatever Lonnie had planned might fall on receptive ground. On the morning of Melissa's birthday, I used my key to enter her apartment while she was at work, placing the package in the center of her dining table as instructed. Then I waited, both dreading and anticipating what would happen when she opened it. Melissa's 30th birthday dawned bright and clear, a beautiful autumn day that belied the emotional storm brewing within our family. For the first time in her adult life, there was no lavish gift waiting for her, no extravagant party planned, no 5-star restaurant reservation. I called early to wish her happy birthday, hearing the strain in her voice as she thanked me. "Any word from Dad?" she asked, the question tentative. "No," I replied, not mentioning the package waiting on her table. That was Lonnie's surprise to reveal. "I keep thinking about what I said to him," she admitted. "I don't even know why I said it. It wasn't true. I've never wanted him gone. Not really. Perhaps you should tell him that, if he reaches out. Would you let me know if he contacts you?" "Of course." I spent the day anxiously checking my phone, expecting a call from Melissa once she discovered the package. By evening, when I'd heard nothing, I began to worry that something had gone wrong. Just as I was considering calling her, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Melissa standing there, her eyes red from crying, the contents of Lonnie's package clutched in her hands. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I ushered her inside, noting how different she looked from the confident, almost arrogant young woman who had sat at Lonnie's dinner table a month earlier. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her face bare of makeup, looking both younger and somehow more authentic than I had seen her in years. "He left this for me," she said, placing the items on my coffee table. "Did you know?" I nodded. "I knew he asked me to deliver something. I didn't know what was inside." The contents of the package were spread out before us. A USB drive, a stack of financial documents, printed emails between Tyler and someone named Vince discussing gambling debts, a handwritten letter in Lonnie's distinctive scrawl, photographs of a concrete foundation surrounded by construction materials, and a deed with Melissa's name on it. "Have you watched the video?" I asked, gesturing to the USB drive. She nodded, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "It's footage of me growing up, but not the usual moments, not birthdays or graduations. It's all these little times when Dad was there that I never acknowledged. Him sitting in the back at my 4th grade play, standing in the rain watching my soccer game when I was 12, working on my science project after I'd gone to bed." She wiped her eyes. "Times I claimed he was absent, but he wasn't. He was there, and I just didn't see him. Or didn't want to." I picked up the financial records, scanning the contents. They were detailed ledgers, showing that Lonnie had been setting aside money for Melissa since the day she was born. Not just trust funds or investments, but careful accounting of expenses for her future needs, educational opportunities, even a wedding someday. "He kept track of everything," Melissa said, watching me review the documents. "Every penny he put aside for me, every sacrifice he made." She held up the emails. "And these prove that Tyler has been stealing from me. He's taken over $200,000 from my accounts over the past year." "Oh, Melissa. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I needed to see this. To understand how blind I've been." She picked up the deed. "This is for the lakefront property. He's put it in my name, with conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "That I build it myself. Well, not literally by myself, but that I oversee the project. Learn the business. Earn it, instead of having it handed to me." She looked down at the letter. "He says he realized that his greatest failure as a father wasn't his absence, but his presence in the wrong way, giving me things instead of guidance, sheltering me from consequences instead of helping me face them. I reached for the letter, but Melissa held it back. There's personal stuff in here, things I need to process before I share them. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Lonnie's gesture hanging in the air between us. What are you going to do? I finally asked. Before she could answer, her phone rang. She checked the screen and grimaced. It's Tyler. He's been calling all day. I haven't answered. Maybe you should. This might be your chance to confront him with what you know. She hesitated, then nodded and accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Happy birthday, babe. Tyler's smooth voice filled the room. I've been thinking, we should talk about working things out. This separation has been good for us to reflect, but I miss you. What do you really want, Tyler? Melissa's tone was flat, emotionless. You, of course. Us. Our future together. And the fact that today's my birthday, the day my father usually gives me an expensive gift, has nothing to do with your sudden desire to reconcile? There was a pause. That's not fair. I'm calling because I care about you. No. You're calling because you thought I'd have money today. But I don't. Dad's cut me off completely. That's temporary. He'll cool down eventually. Your father can't stay away forever. He's too controlling for that. Controlling? Melissa laughed, the sound brittle. That's rich coming from you. I know about the $200,000, Tyler. I know about Vince and the gambling debts. I know everything. Another, longer pause. Melissa, I can explain. No need. We're done. Don't contact me again. You can't just end things like this. Tyler's voice turned hard, the charm evaporating. What are you going to do without me? Without Daddy's money? You don't have the first idea how to take care of yourself. I'm learning, she replied, her voice stronger now. Starting today. She ended the call and looked up at me, a new resolve in her eyes. I need to see Dad, to apologize, to try to make this right. Do you know where he is? I shook my head. He wouldn't tell me, but there might be a clue in the letter. Melissa reread the letter, her brow furrowing in concentration. The last item in the box, she said suddenly. He mentioned that there should be a key with an address attached. She dug through the items on the table, finally locating a small envelope that had fallen to the floor. Inside was a single key and a slip of paper with an address written on it. Below the address was a note. If you're ready to truly start over, I'll be waiting here tomorrow at noon. The next morning dawned with a sense of anticipation and dread. Melissa had spent the night on my couch, too emotionally drained to return to her apartment. Over breakfast, she shared more of what had been in Lonnie's letter. He wrote that he's been enabling my worst tendencies for years. That he thought he was showing love by giving me everything I wanted, but all he did was teach me that I didn't need to earn anything myself. Your father has always struggled with knowing how to show his feelings, I admitted. After the divorce, I think he believed that providing financially was the only way he could prove his love. And I exploited that, Melissa said, her voice breaking. God, Mom, the things I've said to him over the years, the things I've demanded, knowing he wouldn't say no. I reached across the table to take her hand. We all played our parts in this, Melissa. I encouraged your resentment after the divorce. I was hurt and angry, and I used you as a weapon against your father. That wasn't fair to either of you. She squeezed my hand, then glanced at the clock. It's almost time. Will you come with me? I think this is something you need to do alone. This is between you and your father. She nodded, gathering her courage along with her car keys. What if he can't forgive me? He already has, I said with certainty. The question is whether you can forgive yourself. As she left to meet Lonnie, I said a silent prayer that whatever happened next would be the beginning of healing for our broken family. Hours later, my phone rang. It was Melissa, her voice thick with emotion but lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted. I found him, Mom. We talked. Really talked. Maybe for the first time ever. Where was he? At the Lake House Foundation. Sitting on a folding chair in the middle of what would have been the great room, just waiting. And we're going to build it together. Not just the house. Everything. Our relationship. My future. His legacy. But differently this time. The right way. As she shared the details of their conversation, I felt hope blooming for the first time in decades. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now they were both walking in the same direction. What neither of us could have anticipated was how completely this crisis would transform not just Melissa and Lonnie's relationship, but all of our lives, creating space for new beginnings none of us had dared to imagine. Earlier that day, Melissa had driven to the address on the note, her heart pounding with anxiety and hope. The location turned out to be the lakefront property, where construction on her birthday gift had begun and then halted. As she pulled up the long gravel driveway, she could see the concrete foundation stretched out before her, the skeleton of what would have been a magnificent home. And there, in the center of it all, was Lonnie. He sat in a simple folding chair, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, a stark contrast to the immaculate business attire she was accustomed to seeing him in. He looked older somehow, the lines in his face more pronounced, but there was a calmness about him that was new. Melissa parked and walked slowly toward him, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she finally stood before him, words failed her. All the carefully rehearsed apologies evaporated in the face of the raw emotion of the moment. Lonnie didn't stand or reach for her. He simply looked up, his eyes clear and steady. "You came," he said quietly. "Dad, Melissa's voice caught in her throat. "Sit with me," he said, gesturing to another folding chair beside him that she hadn't noticed before. It was as if he had known with absolute certainty that she would come. They sat in silence for a moment, looking out over the foundation to the lake beyond, its surface shimmering in the midday sun. "I opened your package," Melissa finally said. "I saw everything." Lonnie nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I don't even know where to begin." She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. Those words don't seem big enough for what I need to say. But I am so deeply, profoundly sorry." "For what specifically?" Lonnie asked, his tone not accusatory but genuinely inquiring. The question caught her off guard. "For everything. For what I said at dinner. For taking advantage of your generosity all these years. For believing Tyler's lies about you. For spreading those lies to others." "Thank you for that," Lonnie said simply. "I accept your apology." "Just like that?" "Forgiveness isn't the hard part, Melissa. Living differently going forward, that's the challenge." She nodded, understanding dawning. "The video you left me. All those moments when you were present, that I never acknowledged. I'm not showing you those to make you feel guilty," Lonnie clarified. "I wanted you to see that our story isn't as simple as either of us has made it out to be. I wasn't a perfect father, but I wasn't absent either. I was doing the best I knew how. Why didn't you ever say anything? When I accused you of never being there?" Lonnie sighed, looking out over the water. "Pride, I suppose. And guilt. I knew I had prioritized work too often. It seemed easier to accept your version of events than to defend myself. And the financial records? That was to show you that I've always been planning for your future, thinking about your needs. Money was the language I knew how to speak when I couldn't find the right words." He turned to face her directly. "But it was the wrong language. It created a transactional relationship instead of an emotional one." "The emails about Tyler?" Melissa asked, her voice smaller now. "You needed to see the truth. I could have told you he was using you, but you wouldn't have believed me. You needed to see the evidence yourself. He's been stealing from me for over a year, selling things you gave me." "I know," Lonnie said gently. "Joe saw him at pawn shops, gambling dens. I hired a private investigator last month, after the vacation property scam." Melissa flushed with shame at the memory of that lie. "I let him convince me to ask you for money for things that didn't exist. I was a willing participant in manipulating you." "Yes, you were," Lonnie agreed, his honesty both painful and refreshing. "And I let you, because it was easier than confronting the real issues between us." "The deed to this property?" Melissa gestured to the foundation surrounding them. For the first time, Lonnie smiled. "That's the future. If you want it." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I'm offering you a choice. This land is yours now, legally. You can sell it and use the money however you want. Or," he paused, looking around at the partial construction, "or you can build it. Learn the business from the ground up. Create something with your own two hands, instead of just having it handed to you." "I don't know the first thing about construction," Melissa protested. "Neither did I when I started. I was a 22-year-old kid with a toolkit and determination." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You're smart, Melissa. Smarter than I ever was. You could learn this business in half the time it took me. You'd teach me? Every step of the way. But it wouldn't be easy. I wouldn't be handing you anything. You'd start at the bottom, learning each phase of the process. And you'd be living on your salary, not handouts from me." Melissa considered this, looking around at the concrete footprint of what would have been her gift. Now it represented something entirely different, a challenge, an opportunity, a path to redemption. "What about your company? Your work?" "I've been thinking about succession planning for a while now. Joe has been running most of the day-to-day operations for the past year anyway." Lonnie hesitated. "I never considered you as a potential heir to the business because I thought you weren't interested. Was I wrong?" The question hung in the air between them, pregnant with possibility. I never thought about it, Melissa admitted. Construction was always just Dad's work to me, not something I could be part of. And now? She looked around at the foundation again, seeing it with new eyes. Now I think I'd like to try. To learn. To build something real, not just acquire it. Lonnie's expression softened, a cautious hope lighting his eyes. It won't be easy. The hours are long, the work is hard, and you'll make mistakes. Like getting involved with someone who only wanted me for my connection to you? Melissa said with a sad smile. We all make mistakes in judgment, Lonnie replied. The question is what we learn from them. They sat together as the sun moved across the sky, talking more openly than they had in 20 years. Melissa asked about the early days of Harrington construction, hearing for the first time the struggles and sacrifices that had laid the foundation for the success she had taken for granted. Lonnie shared stories of his own father, a factory worker who had died young, leaving the family with nothing. That's why security was so important to me, he explained. Why I worked so hard to make sure you would never know that kind of uncertainty. But in protecting me from insecurity, you prevented me from developing resilience, Melissa observed, the insight catching them both by surprise. As afternoon turned to evening, they walked the perimeter of the foundation together, Lonnie pointing out features of the design, explaining structural elements, asking for her input on changes she might want to make. If we're going to build this together, he said, it should reflect both of us, not just my idea of what you might want. When it was time to leave, they stood beside their cars, a new awkwardness descending as they tried to navigate this fragile, newborn relationship. What happens now? Melissa asked. Now you take some time. Think about whether this is really what you want. If it is, come to the office on Monday, 8 o'clock sharp. You'll start by shadowing our project managers, learning the business from the inside. And if it's not what I want? Lonnie's expression was both loving and firm. Then you make your own path. But whatever you choose, you'll be doing it on your own merits, not my money. The safety net is gone, Melissa. Not because I don't love you, but because I do. She nodded, understanding the gift he was really offering her. Not a house, but a chance to become the person she was meant to be, to earn her own sense of accomplishment and self-worth. One more thing, Lonnie said as she turned to go. Your mother. She deserves to know the truth about all of this, and maybe an apology too. I know, Melissa agreed. I'm going to see her now. As she drove away, watching Lonnie's figure grow smaller in her rearview mirror, Melissa felt a curious mixture of loss and discovery. She had lost the financial security that had defined her adult life, but found something far more valuable in its place. The possibility of a genuine relationship with her father, and the opportunity to discover her own strength. When she called me from her car, the transformation in her voice was unmistakable. Something fundamental had shifted, not just between her and Lonnie, but within herself. Later that evening, after Melissa had gone home to her apartment to begin the process of rebuilding her life on new terms, my phone rang again. It was Lonnie. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For delivering the package. For being there for Melissa, when I couldn't be. For everything. How are you, Lonnie? Really? There was a pause before he answered. I'm grieving. For the years we lost. For the father I didn't know how to be. But I'm also hopeful. For the first time in a long time. She's going to work with you? I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. She's going to try. Whether it sticks or not, at least it's a beginning. Where have you been staying all this time? He chuckled softly. A cabin on the other side of the lake. Close enough to keep an eye on things, far enough away to get perspective. Will you come home now? Not just yet. I'm finding I like the simplicity out here. It gives me time to think about what matters. As we talked, I found myself remembering the young man I had fallen in love with decades earlier. Not the successful businessman with all his wealth and status, but the earnest, hard-working dreamer with calloused hands and infinite determination. Lonnie, I said hesitantly, I've been thinking about my part in all this. The ways I contributed to Melissa's attitudes toward you after the divorce. That's the past, Sarah. We all made mistakes. Still, I'm sorry. I was hurt and angry, and I let those feelings color how I presented you to our daughter. That wasn't fair. Thank you for saying that, he replied, his voice warm with genuine appreciation. Maybe we're all getting a second chance here. Maybe we are, I agreed, surprised by how much I liked that possibility. Before ending the call, Lonnie asked if I would join him and Melissa for dinner the following weekend. Nothing fancy, he specified. Just the three of us, talking like a family. I accepted without hesitation, a sense of rightness settling over me. Whatever happened next, we were moving forward together, rebuilding not just a house, but the foundations of our relationships, creating something stronger and more authentic than what had come before. The Monday morning after her conversation with Lonnie at the lakefront property, Melissa arrived at Harrington Construction headquarters at 7:45, 15 minutes early for her first day. She had dressed carefully in practical clothes, suitable for potential site visits, slacks, a button-down shirt, and sensible shoes, a far cry from the designer outfits she would have worn for a normal day at her marketing job. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take when she gave her name. Melissa Harrington? As in, yes, Lonnie's daughter, she confirmed, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility in the acknowledgement. Joe Peterson met her in the lobby, his expression a careful mask of professional courtesy. Your father asked me to get you started today, he explained, leading her to a small conference room where several other employees were already gathered. He thought it might be easier for both of you if I handled the initial orientation. The morning was a whirlwind of introductions and information. Melissa met project managers, estimators, site supervisors, and office staff, many of whom had known her father for years but had never met her. She absorbed as much as she could about the company's current projects, organizational structure, and processes, aware of the curious glances and whispered conversations that followed her. Around noon, there was a subtle shift in the energy of the office. Melissa looked up from the project binder she had been studying to see Lonnie standing in the doorway of the conference room. How's it going? He asked, addressing the question to both Melissa and Joe. She's a quick study, Joe replied, a hint of approval in his voice. We've covered the basics of project management and estimation this morning. Thought we'd visit the Westridge site this afternoon. Lonnie nodded. Good choice. Melissa, would you like to join me for lunch first? They walked to a small deli down the street from the office, the same place Lonnie had eaten lunch nearly every workday for the past 20 years. The owner greeted him by name and showed them to a quiet table in the back. How does it feel? Lonnie asked, once they had ordered. Being at the company? Overwhelming, Melissa admitted. There's so much I don't know. And everyone's watching me, wondering why I'm suddenly interested in the family business. They're curious, not judgmental, Lonnie assured her. Most of them have been with me for years. They're protective of the company and of me. Joe doesn't seem thrilled to have me there. Lonnie smiled. Joe's cautious. He's seen how our relationship has been over the years. He'll warm up once he sees you're serious about learning. And are you? Melissa asked hesitantly. Seeing that I'm serious? The fact that you showed up this morning tells me something. That you're willing to try. He took a sip of water before continuing. But this is just day one. The real test will come when the novelty wears off and the hard work sets in. After lunch, they returned to the office, where Joe was waiting with hard hats and safety vests for the site visit. Melissa spent the afternoon touring the Westridge project, a luxury condominium development in its early phases of construction. She listened attentively as the site supervisor explained each aspect of the work, asking questions that surprised both Joe and Lonnie with their insight. You've been paying attention, Joe commented as they drove back to the office. I've been trying to understand what Dad built all these years, Melissa replied. What was so important that it took him away from us? Joe glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Your father built this company for you, not instead of you. There's a difference. That evening, exhausted but strangely fulfilled, Melissa returned to her apartment. It felt different now. Smaller, less impressive, but somehow more honest. She had given notice at her marketing job, explaining that she was making a career change. Her boss had been surprised but supportive, offering to provide a reference if needed. The next few weeks established a new routine. Melissa arrived at the office early each morning, spent the day learning various aspects of the construction business, and returned home each evening to study project manuals and industry publications Lonnie had given her. Weekends, once filled with expensive brunches and shopping trips, now involved site visits with Lonnie and occasional dinner at my house, where the three of us were cautiously rebuilding our family dynamic. Tyler made one last attempt to insert himself back into Melissa's life, showing up at her apartment unannounced one evening. Finding her surrounded by blueprints and construction documents, he scoffed at her new direction. This is just a phase, he insisted. You're trying to impress your father. Once he sees you making an effort, he'll open the checkbook again, and things can go back to normal. This is normal now, Melissa replied calmly. And if you knew me at all, you'd understand that I'm not doing this for my father's money. I'm doing it for myself. For yourself? Tyler laughed, the sound ugly and dismissive. Since when do you care about anything but your next shopping spree or vacation? This isn't you, Melissa. No, it isn't the me you knew. That's the point. She stood up, gathering the scattered papers into a neat pile. I need you to leave now, and don't come back. You'll regret this, he warned, his charm falling away entirely. When you're covered in dirt at some construction site while your friends are at the country club, you'll remember what your life was supposed to be. My life is what I make it, Melissa replied, holding the door open. Something I should have realized years ago. After Tyler left, Melissa called me, needing reassurance that she was on the right path. I listened as she recounted the confrontation, hearing the wavering confidence in her voice. He's trying to make you doubt yourself, I told her. Because if you succeed at this, it means he was wrong about you, that you're stronger than he thought. What if I am just going through a phase? She asked, vulnerability bleeding through her newly found determination. What if I can't do this? Then you'll try something else, I replied. The point isn't whether you become a construction mogul like your father. It's that you're making choices based on what you want, not what others expect or what's easiest. 6 weeks into Melissa's new role at Harrington Construction, Lonnie proposed that they revisit the lakefront property together. The foundation had remained untouched since construction halted, a concrete reminder of both painful words and new beginnings. I think it's time we decided what to do with it, Lonnie said, as they stood at the edge of what would have been the great room, whether to move forward or let it go. Melissa walked the perimeter slowly, seeing the space with new eyes now that she understood the fundamentals of construction. The original design was beautiful, she acknowledged. But it wasn't mine. It was your vision of what I might want. Lonnie nodded, unsurprised by her assessment. What would you change? Everything, she admitted with a small laugh. And nothing. The bones are good, but the layout, the features, they reflect someone else's life. Someone I'm not anymore. Then redesign it, Lonnie suggested simply. You've been learning about architectural drawings, structural requirements. Put that knowledge to use. You'd let me completely change your design? It's not my house anymore, Melissa. It's yours. Build what you want, not what you think will impress others. Over the following months, Melissa did exactly that. Working with the company's architects, she reimagined the lakefront house as something more modest, but more meaningful. Gone were the ostentatious features, designed to showcase wealth. In their place were practical, thoughtful elements that reflected her evolving values: a home office where she could continue learning the business, an open kitchen where she could host family dinners, a covered porch where she could sit with her father and watch the sunset over the lake. As the new plans took shape, so did a new relationship between father and daughter. Lonnie remained firm in his commitment to not simply hand Melissa anything. She worked for her place in the company, starting with the most basic tasks and gradually earning more responsibility as she proved herself capable. There were setbacks and arguments. Old patterns occasionally reasserted themselves, Melissa sometimes falling back into entitled expectations, Lonnie sometimes retreating into emotional distance when tensions rose. But the foundation they were building now was stronger than concrete, reinforced with honesty and mutual respect. The weekend dinners at my house became a tradition, a time for the three of us to reconnect and rebuild what had been broken. Initially awkward and tentative, these gatherings gradually evolved into comfortable, genuine family time. Lonnie and I found ourselves reminiscing about the early years of our relationship, sharing stories with Melissa about our own struggles and growth, helping her see that the path to maturity is rarely straight or simple. Nearly a year after that fateful pre-birthday dinner, where cruel words had shattered the facade of our family, we gathered at the lakefront property for a different kind of celebration. Construction on Melissa's redesigned house had progressed steadily, with her actively involved in every phase. The framing was complete, the roof in place, windows installed. It was taking shape as a home, not just a showpiece. Lonnie had arranged for a small catering company to set up a table on what would eventually be the back deck, overlooking the water. As the three of us sat down to dinner, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, there was a sense of coming full circle. I have something for you, Lonnie said, after we had finished eating, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box, similar to the one that had contained the compass the year before. Melissa opened it carefully, revealing a set of keys. The house isn't finished yet, she said, confused. Not those keys, Lonnie explained. These are to my office, to the executive suite. Melissa looked up, stunned. What does that mean? It means I'm promoting you. Officially. Joe and I have been watching your progress, how you've taken to the business, the relationships you've built with the crews and clients. We think you're ready for more responsibility." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes. "I haven't earned this yet." "That's exactly why you have," Lonnie replied, his own eyes growing moist. "A year ago, you would have expected it as your due. Now you question whether you deserve it. That's how I know you're ready." I watched this exchange with a full heart, seeing the genuine pride in Lonnie's expression and the humbled gratitude in Melissa's. They had both changed profoundly in the past year, Lonnie learning to show his love through presence and guidance rather than material gifts, Melissa discovering her own capabilities and the satisfaction of earned achievement. As for me, I had my own journey of growth. I had confronted my role in fostering Melissa's resentment toward her father, acknowledging the ways my own hurt had colored how I presented him to her during her formative years. In the process of helping Melissa and Lonnie heal their relationship, I had also found healing for old wounds of my own. The three of us stood together at the railing of the half-finished deck, looking out over the lake as darkness fell and stars began to appear in the clear night sky. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything, Melissa reflected. My relationship, my financial security, my father. Now I realize I hadn't really had any of those things to begin with, not in any way that mattered. And now? Lonnie asked softly. Now I have something real. Something I've built with my own hands, my own effort, both this house and my place in the company. She turned to look at both of us. And I have a family. A real one. Not just people who share DNA and resentment. As we gathered our things to leave, Melissa paused, running her hand along the newly constructed railing. Thank you, she said, looking directly at Lonnie. Not for the house or the promotion, for canceling the funding, for disappearing when you needed to, for leaving that package on my table, for being brave enough to let me fall so I could learn to stand on my own. Lonnie pulled her into an embrace, the kind of uninhibited, emotional display that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Thank you, he replied, for giving me the chance to be the father you deserved all along. As they held each other, I thought about the words that had started this journey. The greatest gift would be if you just died. In a way, something had died the man who thought love could be purchased, the daughter who measured her worth in material possessions. In their place stood two people who had discovered something far more valuable, the courage to build a relationship based on truth rather than transactions, on mutual respect rather than obligation. Walking back to our cars, Lonnie fell into step beside me, a comfortable silence between us. Just before we reached the driveway, he stopped and turned to face me. Sarah, I've been thinking about us, about the past year, and how we've all been changing, growing. My heart quickened unexpectedly. What about us? We've been good co-parents, even after all these years. Good friends, recently. I've been wondering if perhaps, he hesitated, uncharacteristically unsure of himself. If perhaps there might be something more there. If you might be open to exploring that possibility. The question hung in the air between us. Unexpected yet somehow not surprising. The dinners, the shared concern for our daughter, the rediscovery of what we had valued in each other all those years ago. These had been laying the groundwork for this moment. I think I would be open to that, I replied, a smile spreading across my face, very open. As we drove away from the lakefront property, 3 separate cars headed in the same direction, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey we had taken. What had begun with words of rejection had transformed into a story of reconciliation and renewal. The house taking shape behind us was more than a structure of wood and stone. It was a symbol of what can be built when we have the courage to tear down the facades we hide behind and start again with a foundation of truth. Have you ever experienced a painful turning point that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Sometimes the hardest moments can become catalysts for growth if we're willing to learn from them. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message of reconciliation and second chances. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you the courage to build authentic connections in your own life.